From defeating a resurrected Emperor Palpatine to triumphing over the evil deity of chaos Abeloth, Grandmaster Luke Skywalker has proven himself to be the heir to the Chosen One. Wielding mind-boggling power in the Force, he is shown to be capable of some truly insane feats. His Force lightning was potent enough to one-shot a Yuzhong Vong warrior with lightsaber-resistant skin. He once casually knocked over an AT-AT with his mind, and even walked across lava, to name just a few of his most wild accomplishments. But while we've gone over many of these feats in the past, naming as many as we could, today we decided to pay a different kind of respect to Master Skywalker. With everything the Grandmaster has accomplished strength-wise, we couldn't help but wonder what ranked as his most dominating feats in the lore. So that's exactly what we're going to discuss in today's video. Greetings again, Acolytes, and welcome back to the archives. Today we're going to take a look at 3 of Luke Skywalker's most overpowered and unknown moments that most wouldn't typically pull from in the lore. There are of course so many feats to talk about that 3 is simply not enough, but we wanted to take our time analyzing each of these feats in particular and explain and explore exactly what makes them so impressive. So if you enjoy this type of deep dive, then comment down below what other moments you would like to see explored, as we would love to explore a part 2 of Grandmaster Luke's greatest feats. But before we dive in, we don't have the far-reaching side of the Grandmaster, but we have felt some disturbances rippling through the Force. Some of you who are watching today are not yet subscribed. Every day we're analyzing lore both old and new within these Holocron uploads, and we would be remiss if any one of you should miss out on it. So summon the depths of your own power, and force crush that subscribe button to become an acolyte today. Now, let us begin. During his life, Luke had become a literal beacon in the Force, one able to vanquish and compete with Abeloth. Luke has literally come back from being briefly becoming one with the Force before, learning its truest, most natural way. This is a massive feat, but today, we wanted to look at the lore and watch where he tipped the scales so unfairly in his favor that all witnesses were left in a state of awe. These are instances where Luke was facing lesser enemies that didn't understand the full breadth of his power, and so he chose to enlighten them. The first, and one of our favorites, is from the Dark Nest trilogy, the Swarm War. This was a historical moment where Luke Skywalker truly accepted his role as the Grandmaster, and shows the galaxy what he's actually capable of. The beginning to all of this is the Jedi are at war with the Killik hive mind. The Killiks are being manipulated by a hidden influence known as the Gorog, also known as the Dark Nest. The Dark Nest is revealed to be one of Luke's own Jedi, Raynar Thol, who has joined the hive mind and is now a part of this leadership. But by joining with the Killiks, he became more than a normal Jedi. The Killiks were also Force sensitive in some capacity, with a few of them being trained, and of course, if one of them was trained, then that knowledge was transferred to all of them, belonging to the larger hive mind. Raynar was actually able to tap into the Force potential of the entire Killik colony combined into one entity, making him a truly dangerous force. With the Killiks now attempting to wipe out the Chiss ascendancy, Luke ended up joining forces with Thrawn's old Imperial command in order to put an end to the war, a war that now threatened the entire galaxy. At the climax, the Killiks are swarming the planet of Tanoop, and Luke leads the Jedi Order into a final confrontation. Fighting is erupting everywhere, where it appears as though the Jedi are going to be completely overrun by the Killiks. But Luke goes off by himself to strike at the very heart of their operation, to cut off Gorog at the head, and hopefully bring back his wayward student. On his way to the nest, groups of Killiks attempted to block his path, but Luke negligently unleashes a Force blast of energy that immediately puts them all down in a single wave. Within the hive mind, he faces down Raynar, who approaches with a couple of Killik bodyguards. Luke is then described as a blur of motion, nimbly moving between blaster bolts and taking apart the enemies as if they were all standing still. He finishes the pair of bodyguards by force pushing them into a wall so hard that their thoraxes completely burst. Still overconfident from drawing upon the full potential of the entire colony though, Raynar ignites his lightsaber and engages the Grandmaster in a fierce duel. But let's just say that he thought it was going to be fierce. The duel in reality was brief. Luke simply moves out of the way of Raynar's first attacks and sweeps him off of his feet, dismembering his forearm directly to disarm him of his lightsaber. Raynar, though, still empowered by the colony, is able to ignore the pain of losing an arm and attempts to unleash a wave of Force energy to send Luke flying down the corridor. But this is what the novel says. But this time, Luke was ready. He placed his own hand in front of Raynar's and rooted himself in the heart of the Force. And when he did that, he became the very essence of the immovable object. Nothing could dislodge him, not one of Lando's asteroid tuggers, not one of Megador's 16 ion engines, not the black hole at the center of the galaxy itself. Raynar continued to struggle, trying to hurl Luke down the corridor. trying to move him a single centimeter. Luke did not budge, and finally, Raynar stopped struggling, meeting his eyes with a stunned and an anguished gaze. Luke immediately picks Raynar up by the throat and slams him into the wall, pinning him there using force telepathy and using his mind to draw out the Killik hive mind meld. It's not long after this that Luke meets up with Lomi Plo, the Night Sister who's responsible for creating the Gorog Dark Nest in the first place at that time, and was dueling her one-handed with her two-bladed assault. And yet, when the time came for her to leap at him with a killing strike, Luke said that her aggression had made her extremely predictable. Remaining cool and calm, Luke makes two distinct motions with his lightsaber here. Between the moment she reached him in the air and the moment she was able to strike, Luke cut her into 4 pieces. Her bits landed at his feet, and he took a moment to pity her, unimpressed by her utterly, and shocked that she had been the one to start this entire mess. While Luke's battle accolades are of course something that we marvel at, what I found to be most impressive was his showcase of immovability. Luke Skywalker rooted himself in the heart of the Force. He became the very essence of an immovable object. Using sheer force power alone, Luke could not be budged no matter how much exertion Raynar put. But this is not the first or the last time he used force immovability, as it becomes a tool that he has a surprising number of uses with. And while I don't think that immovability is a Luke exclusive, he certainly is the one Jedi that gets the most use out of it. For our next pick, we wanted to go with one of Luke's feats that I feel is a bit underrated. At one point in time, he would use a massive force illusion to cloak the Vagabond, which was a ship measuring 1,500 meters long. That is only about 100 meters short of an Imperial Star Destroyer. Using battle meditation, Luke made the entire vessel completely vanish from sight. To understand this, we have to understand the complexities of what Luke pulled off here. Force illusion usually falls under the umbrella of affect mind, which means that one desires to cast an illusion, there has to be a target to perceive it. Basically meaning, one isn't simply making a vision appear out of thin air, but affecting the perceptions of specific individuals around them. The ability of force projection is also a different kind of illusion, as it's projecting a visual onto another location. What Luke did was essentially combine these two principles to create a similar effect, using the Force as a cloaking device. When he did this, there was a specific target that he was trying to trick. Rather though, he was attempting to establish a cloak over the ship in order to remain in place for a temporary period of time. Essentially, using the Force to bend the light waves around the entire vessel so that it completely vanished to the physical eye. This would be an insane feat if done on oneself, or even with a group of people. But when Luke did it, when he was on this ship, it was just shy of the size of a Star Destroyer. And even after doing it, not only was he not tired, but Luke was disappointed with the result. Luke believed that his touch was too heavy-handed, and he still had room to improve. If you want to think about it this way, this feat is technically equivalent to Starkiller having pulled down a Star Destroyer from the sky. While Luke didn't exhibit a destructive power, he still held a 1,500 meter long ship totally under his influence, and totally under the influence of the Force, so the principle is the same. Not to mention while Starkiller had to exert every bit of his power to execute just a raw shoving of power, and to bring down a ship, Luke exercised an extremely intricate and a complex ability of the same scale, but with ease. Luke even critiqued himself after the fact. But if you still desire to see Luke telekinetically take control of a massively impressive object, then look no further than the Yuzhong Vong War. In the war, when he manipulated a tiny, artificial black hole. A Vong ship had something known as the Doven Bastles, which would manipulate gravity for defense purposes. They were shown to be capable of creating black holes that could move entire moons. But we'll just go ahead and read from the novel. Luke sank back into the chair, and he closed his eyes. He took a deep breath, and reached out through the Force. He let his sense of things ride above the frayed one's jagged profile, and vectored in towards the vehicle. He got no solid sense of it directly, though a few frayed ones did appear to be housed inside. Instead, he used that emptiness as a way to point to search out a void, and as it formed, the black hole blossomed fully in the Force. The void that the vehicle's Doven Bastles created to intercept the missiles, this was a gravitic anomaly that had substance in the real world. Tiny threads of the Force leaked into it as insects and birds, bats, and bugs were pulled in. Luke would use their vanishing life traces, the very currents in the air that the void created, to define the void. He traced its edges, knew exactly where it was, and knew how powerful it was. He opened himself to the Force more fully than he had in years. He sought more power than he had when freeing his nephew. The Force flooded into him, at once molten metal hot, yet as soothing as a cool rain. It swirled through him, filling every cell of his body, freeing him from fatigue, sharpening his mind. Luke reached out with that power and latched onto the void that the Yuzhong vehicle had created. He pushed a bit, then tugged. In nanoseconds, getting a feel for the power of the Basiles, they were able to exert control over this void. Luke almost smiled, since that amount of power was nothing compared to the Force. But he stopped himself short of pride in that fact. Immediately, the Dovin Basiles started to shift, and the void began to cover for a new attack vector. Luke fed the Force into the hold on the void, thwarting them. Their pressure increased though, and Luke still held it unmoving. The torpedoes got closer and closer. The Basiles pulled harder, and with their effort reached a new peak. Luke let the void slip over towards intercepting the proton torpedoes. The Dovin Basiles devoted their efforts to sliding the void back into place, which required both the same lateral movement and shortening the arc over the void that it would travel. As they brought it close to the vehicle, Luke pushed with the Force. Since the Dovin Basiles were already tugging the void back towards the vehicle, they were not prepared to have the travel accelerated. The void crashed into the vehicle, striking it in mid-spine. The long vehicle bent backwards as both ends became sucked into the black hole. It flowed like thick liquid, all the sharp horns, all the bony plates becoming fluid as they curved up over the void's event horizon. In less than an eye blink, the vehicle had been consumed by the void, leaving a huge gap in the Yuzhong formation. In this instance, Luke is not simply moving the black hole, but actively wrestling for control over it against an opposing force. But that opposing influence was so inferior to Luke that Luke actually held himself back from smiling when he opened himself up to the Force, drawing upon its power and exerting himself to a point that he hadn't in years according to his own admission. This gives you a pretty good idea of how powerful Luke really is. This was a casual affair. Grandmaster Luke treats artificial black holes as if they were an obstacle, and then can turn them into weapons for his own cause if he wants. But guys, these were 3 of Grandmaster Luke's most overpowered feats. Many believe that they're able to stand against Luke, and they find out that they were woefully mistaken. We of course enjoy getting to see moments when they truly grasp the Force, and the greatest levels of its greatest wielders. Anakin never got to demonstrate what the Chosen One was capable of, but luckily we get to see some of it through power displays from Luke. There are still many more of these feats to talk about though, so if you want a part 2 of this video about Grandmaster Luke Skywalker's greatest feats, we'd be happy to make it. And let us know, what feats do you think should be included in this video and later ones? As always my friends, thank you guys so much for stopping by the channel and the archives today, and as always, may the Force be with you.